Human and Covenant forces are speeding toward a remarkable discovery, a second Halo ring, and the Battle of Installation 05 is right on the horizon. With the first elements of the Battle of Earth now in their wake, both the Prophet of Regrets carrier, the Solemn Penance, and the In Amber Clad, a Starwalt-class light frigate, are now on their way towards Installation 05. This coming engagement has a lot of twists and turns, but the objectives of human forces in the initial phases of this engagement would be to kill the Prophet of Regret, establish a foothold on the Halo ring, and eventually prevent the Covenant from successfully firing the ring. Meanwhile, Covenant loyalists would seek to prevent the UNSC from gaining a foothold on their holy relic and protect the Prophet of Regret, while hopefully eventually firing the Halo ring. The battle would begin on November 2nd, 2552, when both the Solemn Penance and the In Amber Clad exited slipspace above Installation 05. The Solemn Penance quickly made its way down to the surface of the ring and began deploying troops to the surface of the holy relic, the Prophet of Regret setting up his command center inside an ancient Forerunner rune. Meanwhile, the crew of the In Amber Clad quickly set their sights on killing the Prophet of Regret. Moving into the upper atmosphere, the In Amber Clad deployed the Master Chief and a number of ODSTs via Soyuz drop pods down to the surface of the ring, securing a small beachhead while they began to prepare to assault Regret's position. Meanwhile, Sergeant Johnson supported from above in a Pelican. Fearing the activation of the ring as an imminent possibility and understanding how the ring worked from their experiences on Installation 04, the In Amber Clad was dispatched to the library to attempt to gather the activation index, a necessary artifact for activating the weapon. Meanwhile, the Master Chief led a strike force in an effort to kill the Prophet of Regret. However, unlike Installation 04, Installation 05's library was protected by a series of containment layers intended to keep the Flood away from the activation index. This created a significant obstacle for both Covenant and human forces attempting to activate or prevent the activation of the ring. As the In Amber Clad was arriving at this containment shield, a much larger Covenant force arrived in system. This fleet included the Covenant capital of High Charity, as well as its defense fleet and the second fleet of Homogeneous Clarity. However, the arrival of this much larger Covenant force was far too late to prevent the assassination of the Prophet of Regret, who was killed at the hands of the Master Chief with the failure of his honor guards to protect him. At around the same time, the In Amber Clad deployed a platoon of Marines to the surface of the ring in an effort to breach the containment wall and make their way towards the activation index. However, at this time, the Flood had now been released on the ring, and engagements began breaking out between UNSC forces and Flood-infected in that region. Later that same day, the Sangheili, the elites, are officially replaced in the role of the Prophet's guards by the Brutes. And under the new command of Brute leadership, Covenant forces, mainly consisting of Brutes, began assaulting the shield walls that protected the library. As November 3rd, 2552 rolled around, the battle continued to center around the activation index and the library with its many containment fields. On the ring, the Flood were overrunning the outer walls of protection, while the ring began to automatically deploy its defensive forces, a large factory of sentinels, hovering over the library, which began manufacturing defensive forces, which quickly became a target for the Flood, and was subsequently shot down by Flood-occupied Covenant Wraiths, which had been modified for the anti-air role. By the end of the morning on November 3rd, UNSC forces had managed to reach the library at the heart of the containment zone and had begun preparing to access the activation index. Right behind them, though, was a Covenant force led by the Arbiter seeking to achieve the same goal for the Covenant, unaware that the Great Schism was now well underway within the Covenant ranks. While human forces led by Keyes and Johnson were the first to actually access the activation index, they were ambushed by Covenant forces led by the Arbiter. These Covenant forces were able to secure the activation index, however, were then betrayed by the Brutes, among them led by Tartarus, who attempted to kill the Arbiter, ultimately unsuccessfully. At around the same time, the elite members of the Covenant High Council are massacred in an event that would ultimately trigger the violent stages of the Great Schism. At this time, Tartarus, now the de facto leader of the Brutes, basically declared war on the elites, and elite and Brute commanded ships began firing on one another in space around the Covenant capital of High Charity and Installation 05, plunging Covenant forces into utter chaos. In this chaos, the Prophet of Truth formally transfers control of the Covenant military from the elites to the Brutes, claiming them to be the true loyalists of the Covenant. To add to this chaos, after having deployed its ground troops, the In Amber Clad had been overrun by Flood forces and was now under Flood control, and using a short-range slipspace jump, the In Amber Clad, as well as its Pelicans, had managed to penetrate High Charity and begun a flood infection amongst the Covenant capital. This flood infection would quickly claim the lives of many of the members of the Covenant leadership, including the Prophet of Mercy, who was allowed to die by the orders of the Prophet of Truth, who was now trying to seize the role as the de facto leader of the Covenant. Back on the ring with the activation index in hand, Covenant forces make their way towards the command center for Installation 05, with human forces in tow, mostly as captives. Back on High Charity, the Prophet of Truth makes his way on board an ancient Forerunner dreadnought sitting at the heart of the Covenant capital city and launches the vessel into space, with the Master Chief having snuck on board, the vessel now bound for Earth. On the surface of the ring, however, another battle has broken out as human forces, assisted by elite separatists, have now launched an assault on the control room in an effort to prevent the activation of the Halo ring. However, during this assault, the Halo array is ordered to be fired, but that firing sequence is ultimately aborted, an event that put the entire Halo system on to a standby mode. In the defense of this control center, however, Tartarus, the de facto leader of the Brute faction, is killed, and the rest of the Brutes that remained loyal to the Covenant sided with the Prophet of Truth, who was now bound for Earth to take part in the second phases of the Battle of Earth. As Covenant loyalist and Separatist forces continued to battle in space, the balance of power shifted in favor of Separatist forces, who ultimately were able to wipe out the remaining Covenant loyalist ships, or seize the remaining Covenant loyalist ships over the ring and gain space superiority. With space superiority now in the hands of Covenant separatists, the Covenant separatist fleet was able to effectively glass a majority of the ring, wiping out the flood infestation on the Halo installation. However, the infestation aboard High Charity was able to survive and slip out of system. Through all of this, the Prowler, the UNSC Dusk, was quietly watching in the shadows, and once the battle had panned out in favor of Covenant separatists, they were able to assist in recovering any UNSC survivors and returning these forces to Earth to participate in the Second Battle of Earth, ending the Battle of Installation 05, a 2-day-long mess of a battle, in a draw or a Covenant separatist victory. All of this is happening on the heels of the first segments of the Battle of Earth, which saw Covenant forces led by the Prophet of Regret attempt to seize the human homeworld, at least long enough to begin the excavation of the portal to the Ark. If you'd like to learn about what happened on October 20th and 21st, 2552, I'll leave a link in the upper right-hand corner to my battle analysis on that. And if you have any other engagements like to see covered in future episodes of Battle Analysis and added to the archive, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.